Rags to Riches, a male Cinderella story. Ash's life had not always been marked by hardship. As a young boy, his father was a kind-hearted blacksmith who worked hard to provide for Ash and his doting mother. Though they lived humbly in a small village, Ash was content and wanted for nothing. Tragedy struck when his beloved father fell ill and passed away. For months, Ash's mother was consumed by grief. Lonely and seeking security, she eventually remarried to a wealthy traveling merchant named Bartholomew who seemed genteel at first. But upon their wedding day, Bartholomew's warm facade dissolved, revealing his true nature as a cruel, selfish man. Ash's mother pleaded with her new husband, but his greed and harshness only grew worse as time passed. To make matters even more difficult, Ash now lived with his two arrogant, loutish stepbrothers Gaston and Luther. Though close in age to Ash, they bullied and mocked him relentlessly, inventing cruel punishments if he ever talked back or tried to stand up to their taunts. When Ash's mother also died from fever, his stepfather's indifference turned to malice and tyranny. No longer needing to keep up appearances, Bartholomew wasted no time in turning Ash into a servant, banishing him to the stable and forcing him to sleep alongside the horses and oxen. Ash was made to cook, clean, and tend to every minor chore in the manor. Beatings and verbal abuse from Gaston and Luther became routine anytime Ash made the slightest error or tried to rest from his endless labor. The stepbrothers delighted in inventing vile names, jabbing Ash with sticks, and bloodying his nose if he cried out. Bartholomew urged his sons to toughen the weak, spineless boy into obedience and regularly caned Ash's hands himself when his chores were lacking. Ash felt helpless, afraid, and alone in his own home now turned into a miserable prison at the hands of his stepfamily. Though the kingdom itself was peaceful and prosperous under the benevolent King Randolph, Ash took no comfort in this. His only dream was escaping the endless torment and finding a new life far away from his wicked step-relatives. One morning, town criers came through announcing a royal decree from Princess Cinderella. She was seeking a husband from amongst the common people. Any man in the kingdom could compete in a series of trials to win her hand in marriage. The reward was not only becoming a prince, but half ownership of the entire kingdom. Men and women of all ages flocked to the arena in the week leading up to the competition, eager for a chance at glory. Hearing the news, Ash's heart leapt with hope. If he could somehow compete and win, he would finally be free of his abusive family. But Ash had no armor, horse, or weapons with which to compete. His stepfather refused to loan him any equipment, laughing that it would be wasted on a weak, useless boy like him. Ash's stepbrothers joined in taunting him, teasing that he would be knocked flat in seconds if he was foolish enough to try. Though his spirit was willing, Ash despaired that his lowly status left him unable to even attempt the trials. On the eve of the competition, Ash crept away from the manor into a moonlit clearing in the forest. Surrounded by fireflies, he sat with his head buried in his hands, trying to ignore the jeers of his stepbrothers echoing in his mind. As he wrestled with wanting to be brave yet feeling powerless, Ash noticed a strange glow surrounding him. Suddenly, a fairy godfather appeared, emerging from the mist. Startled yet intrigued, Ash learned that this magical being had been sent to assist those with pure intentions. The godfather could sense the injustice of Ash's plight and his kind, courageous heart. Though wary, Ash poured out his hopes and fears, explaining his desire to compete, win Cinderella's hand, and finally escape his abusive stepfamily. He knew it was impossible without equipment, training, and a noble background. But the godfather shook his head, insisting that righteousness, resilience, and moral character mattered more than status and wealth when it came to true love. He declared that Ash deserved to be treated with dignity. With that, he conjured up a fine tunic, a suit of shining silver armor, a magnificent steed, and a bundle of food, magical gifts that would last for 3 days' time. The godfather explained the armor was enchanted to perfectly fit Ash's form, making him impossible to knock down. The mighty horse would respond swiftly to his commands as if it could read his mind. And the tunic bore special properties to help heal any injuries sustained in the contest. Comforted by the godfather's empowering words, Ash bravely committed to competing not just for his own freedom, but to show the kingdom that goodness can come from anywhere. After hugging the godfather in gratitude, Ash snuck back to the stables and settled in for a few hours of sleep, more hopeful than he had felt in years. The next morning, Ash set out for the arena early. Because the magical armor obscured his face, none of the confused spectators or competitors realized a mysterious contender had joined at the last second. Though Ash stood shorter than most, the armor bulked out his frame, making him appear to be a brawny knight. For the first trial, competitors had to demonstrate their archery skills by firing at distant targets while riding their steeds at full gallop. Ash's aim was unwavering after years of targeting the rats in the filthy stable to satisfy his hunger. He struck arrow after arrow in the direct center, edging out even the most acclaimed nobleman in the contest. Princess Cinderella sat upon a high balcony festooned with flowers to observe the trials. Though many competitors flexed and showed off in vain attempts to grab her attention, she found herself drawn to the smaller mysterious figure who remained humble and focused. After Ash's astounding victory, Cinderella broke customs by leaving her perch and approaching to congratulate him directly. Up close, she was struck by the man's gentle demeanor, which contrasted with the bluster of arrogant nobles competing for her hand. In acknowledgement, she gifted Ash her own embroidered handkerchief, which he accepted with a gracious bow. As Ash spoke thanks, Cinderella noted his refined, eloquent words so unlike the crude diction of most commoners. Intrigued, she found herself wishing luck upon this chivalrous competitor before returning to her royal platform. For the contest of horsemanship, riders had to race at top speed through an obstacle course while spearing rings with their lances. Once again, Ash's innate bond with his steed allowed him to outpace the field. His lance struck true every time, even upon rings hidden slyly behind barriers. Having already bested nobles and knights, Ash also won the jousting tournament on the second day, unhorsing all opponents with well-aimed strikes from his trusty lance. Though bruises and scrapes ached beneath his armor, the magic kept his injuries minor. Amongst the competitors were Gaston and Luther, though neither Ash nor his stepbrothers recognized each other in armor. Fuming at being bested by a mysterious commoner, his cruel stepbrothers conspired with a gang of knights to ambush and unmask the surprisingly talented champion before the final event. In the melee combat tournament that afternoon, Ash defeated 4 knights in a row, then knocked the arrogant Gaston flat onto his back, rupturing the breastplate of his fine armor. Gaston howled in pain and rage as Ash offered him a hand up respectfully per the rules. Luther managed to strike a blow to Ash's shoulder but paid for it quickly as Ash wheeled about and slammed his mace into Luther's side, cracking several ribs and leaving him unable to continue. The watching crowd cheered wildly, amazed that 2 burly knights had been bested by the short, slender challenger. That evening, Cinderella held an intimate feast for the few remaining competitors. She sat beside the diminutive champion who had impressed her so deeply with his humble courage in the face of more seasoned knights. Away from the crowds, she and Ash found easy conversation. Amused by his wit and touched by his concern for the peasants of the kingdom, Cinderella felt drawn to this man in a way she had not expected. As minstrels played gentle music, Cinderella led the champion out for a dance alone, staring into the eyes behind his mask as their steps fell into rhythm. In just 2 days' time, her heart had opened to this gallant commoner whose spirit and goodness outshone nobles born to wealth and power. The final day of competitions featured a grueling hunt. Competitors raced on horseback into the heart of the dark forest to retrieve a lost royal artifact. It was rumored dark magic resided within the woods, with traps and tricks awaiting any who dared enter. Survival alone would prove a contestant's grit. Again riding his tireless steed, Ash navigated perilous ravines, false trails, and concealed pits that unsaddled his fellow competitors. His innate sense of direction guided him even though the godfather's enchantments started to wear off halfway through the untamed forest. After hours of riding, Ash finally located the lost artifact glittering beneath a stone shrine, moments before both Gaston and Luther emerged from the woods, converging on his position. Still oblivious to his identity, the wicked stepbrothers had conspired to ambush and unmask the surprisingly talented champion after he claimed his prize. Their wounded pride burned at losing to a commoner. Thinking quickly, Ash whispered for his steed to distract the riders before grabbing the artifact and racing back the way he came. He emerged from the cursed woods moments before his two rivals, artifact held high in weary triumph as cheers rang out from the roaring crowd. Though caked in dirt and blood, Ash brought the prize to Cinderella's feet where she awaited on her royal balcony. As celebratory fanfare played, Ash kneeled before the princess, honored to have proven himself against such accomplished knights and nobles. But as he stood and removed his helmet, the magical armor dissolved entirely, exposing his lowly servant's tunic and ragged trousers underneath. Gasps of shock rippled through the stunned crowd at the champion's actual common status. Before Cinderella could utter a word, Ash turned and fled from the arena back toward his village, thoughts racing. Though he had somehow succeeded in the trials, Ash felt only a fool for believing he, an orphaned servant, could marry a beloved princess and escape his wretched fate. Ash slipped back into the manor he despised, his heart leaden knowing Cinderella now saw him for what he was, the lowliest of peasants. But his wicked stepfamily had witnessed his unmasking from the arena crowds. Furious that the mysterious champion was none other than the boy they themselves had abused and denigrated, Bartholomew, Gaston, and Luther seized Ash. Though he struggled, without the magic armor, Ash was easily overwhelmed. The wicked stepbrothers descried Ash to the cellar, locking his ankles in irons usually meant for captured thieves. There he was kept for weeks, living off scraps tossed down barely enough to keep him alive. His stepfamily swore he would rot and die before anyone thought to look in their fine home for a mere commoner. Up above, Princess Cinderella scoured the kingdom seeking her missing champion, but no commoner matched the man who had won her heart through his actions, not status. As weeks passed with no trace of him, Cinderella fell into despair, confused about how someone so compassionate could disappear. Finally, her own fairy godmother appeared, sensing Cinderella's grief. The godmother revealed that the champion was likely imprisoned by those jealous of his pure heart. She advised Cinderella to search for him directly rather than wait on decorum. Trusting her intuition, Cinderella rode to the champion's village immediately. Once there, Cinderella went door to door herself, questioning families rather than relying on soldiers. At one otherwise charming cottage, she noticed the master of the house stuttering and stumbling over answers about any servants. Demanding entry, Cinderella and her guards stormed inside. In the cellar, filthy and malnourished, they found Ash with infected scars around his shackled ankles. But Cinderella would recognize his kind, resilient eyes anywhere. Finally reunited, Cinderella embraced Ash, denouncing his wicked stepfamily for their deceit and cruelty. Right there, she ordered them arrested and charged with false imprisonment, assault, obstruction of justice, and theft for denying a royal decree. Cinderella tenderly unshackled and comforted Ash, reassuring him that status meant nothing. She had fallen in love with his spirit. Over the next month, the princess nursed Ash back to full health as an honored guest of the royal family. Once his strength returned, before the entire court, Cinderella asked for Ash's hand in marriage just as he had bravely competed for hers. Surrounded by adoring citizens, not cruel step-siblings, they wed in a ceremony that honored both commoner and royal alike. Though tried by injustice, Princess Cinderella and the gallant Ash triumphed through resilience and love. They ushered in an era of benevolence and prosperity for all classes that was long remembered. Despite differences in status, their commitment to justice unified the kingdom, for where kindness dwells, nobility cannot be bought or earned, only freely given. The end. What did you think of this story? Did you enjoy the twist on this classical story? Let us know in the comments if you want other classics imagined in new ways. Stay safe, and until next time.